Hello, my dears. I am finally back making content. I have been sick for the past too long, if I'm honest with y'all. It has been like an insane amount of time.
Is that so?
Probably just 3 weeks, but I'm, dramatizing. So anyway, I am back at making content and functioning more or less normally. So here I am. Today we are trying out a new type of content. We are going to react to videos and comment on them because I feel like I want to talk about many things, but then again it's very hard to remember about all of the things that I want to talk to you about. So maybe if we take it one video at a time, we are going to answer all of the questions you might have about mental health, the world, philosophy, everything. So for today, I'm just going to go through some videos that I have saved that some of you have sent me, and I guess we are just going to go from there. Oh, first, let me just, of course, make sure that I record the screen, otherwise you're not going to see what I see. Okay, I think we're live, so let's just...
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love coming to Costco with your wife?
Oh, God.
0. How much do you love coming to Costco with your wife?
It's not a flex, guys.
0. Can I say negative?
Negative?
So what's the number? 0.
Oh.
How much do you love coming to Costco with your wife?
That's honestly sad.
Without her, 10. 1 to 10, how much do you love coming to Costco with your wife? How about 0? Do you love coming to Costco with your wife? Oh, 0.
My God, if this would be my husband, I would divorce.
We come here all the time, so I probably 9 or 10.
Oh.
0. 2. What's the number?
God.
Minus 0.
Okay, I think we just can stop because I think I got the idea, and this is the perfect example of why relationships are going to shit right now, because we all grew up looking at this type of behavior as, a funny joke and not actually as what it is. This is passive-aggressive compliance, okay? So, patriarchy has men in a toxic cycle, right? They don't want to engage in domestic labor, either because they think it's beneath them or because they deemed it unnecessary, whatever it is. But they also know that not helping at all would make them morally suspect, let's say. And of course, they don't want to have a fight with their spouse, so they often feel a conflict they can't properly verbalize. The very uncomfortable feeling that they're trapped between two identity threats, essentially, being seen as lazy or being seen as emasculated. Now, this type of feeling is very complex and would need some time to properly reach it, but more often than not, most men tend to solve this inner conflict by technically cooperating, but in truth, they're emotionally protesting. That's why, if they're helping, that help usually comes with visible annoyance, right? Like jokes more or less full of contempt, constant reminders of how whatever the task they're doing, it's useless and stupid and unnecessary or not their responsibility, right? Psychologically, it fixes both threats, this type of attitude. On one side, you solve the threat of being seen as lazy because look, you actually took your wife to Costco, right? You're there, you're pushing the cart. That's half of the problem solved. On the other side, you also solve the threat you might be seen as or feel emasculated because look how much contempt you're showing. That should make it clear to me, to your wife, and to the men around that you're still a man who hates these womanly things. They try to emasculate you, but you're faster than them. But you gotta endure Costco with the missus because you're a man and that's what men do. Now, I don't want to excuse the behavior, but rather I would like to contextualize it and discuss together one of the theories I have when it comes to this type of phenomenon. To a degree, I consider that many men that find themselves in this position experience a sort of arrested development. Because hear me out here. In a lot of households, boys learn 2 core lessons early. First, domestic labor is not their responsibility. Second, if it does become theirs, then something has gone wrong. So when adulthood demands of them to participate, it creates almost like a double bind. They lack the skills and now they experience the request as an identity threat. So thoughts like, why is this my responsibility now? I am not bothered. I don't care about it. Why is it my problem? These types of thoughts start forming automatically, which makes the individual feel like they have now an obligation. Ergo, the protest behavior. The healthy thing to say as a man that for whatever reason doesn't want to go to Costco is, I would prefer not to go to Costco unless really necessary, but while you're gone, I'll clean the place, or I'll cook, or I'll wash the dishes, whatever, right? But you see, because in their childhoods they were never socialized into contribution, they also weren't taught to ask themselves, like, what needs doing? You know, what would help my family or the situation, not just me? Where can I step in without being asked? That's why many put themselves in this reactive mode where they wait for instructions or lists rather than take ownership, or they wait for requests instead of simply having initiative. But what isn't yet fully understood, it seems, is that this is not how adult partnerships work. They're not about being told what to do, they're about knowing what to do, and if unclear, we figure it out based on observation. Saying I enjoy spending time with my wife 0 out of 10 communicates to your partner that you think they are a burden, not a source of pleasure. And to be honest, that's cruel. There's nothing funny about it, but many men are genuinely oblivious to the emotional impact of this kind of language. Hey guys, editing Sil here. I completely forgot to tell you that there is actually a term for this. It was first found by John Heyman, I think it was his name. And I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, but he was an American linguist and professor, and he was the one that came up with the term guiltive, which basically refers to someone's attitude as indifferent or even polite, but in reality, the tone and delivery of the remark is intended to make the other person feel guilty, feel small. So that's it. Nobody wants to feel like they're being tolerated instead of chosen, which takes us back to why so many women are opting out and divorce rates are like, you know, going through the roof. Being alone creates a predictable loneliness, but it's stable. And with time and work, oneself can transform in one's own sanctuary. But being in a relationship where you're consistently made to feel like an inconvenience creates an unstable, corrosive loneliness, let's say, one where safety is never clear, because you constantly have to brace yourself from when your partner reminds you they tolerate you, they never chose you. Wow, that was a lot for one video. But you know, I think it's important to talk about these things. So I hope you don't mind me being incredibly thorough with my explanations. And even so, I still feel like I have forgot to say something, but you know, if you have questions, you know what to do. Okay, now let's go to the next video.
Babe, put your seatbelt on. Run late.
Hi, Joe. I was already putting the seatbelt on.
I'm just letting you know.
I wouldn't
That's a weird
get
answer.
in the car and not have a seatbelt
But you
on.
can get a ticket for not having a seatbelt.
I know. Well, trust me, I wouldn't not wear a seatbelt.
These are
when
very
I'm
weird
driving.
answers.
I'm just trying to help you out. Doesn't have to be an argument.
I know, but you know I don't like when you tell me to do things. What are you doing, Joe?
I just asked you to put seatbelt
I
on.
know, but I was already doing it.
But that's
Oh,
a
God.
good thing.
Wow, this is so common. I love it.
I just feel like we're always having this conversation.
The
If
always.
you were driving, I want you to remind me to put the seatbelt on.
And that's an issue on
Even little
itself.
guys that don't put seatbelts on.
Okay, I'm not an idiot. I know how to put a seatbelt on.
But why are you still arguing? We're not in the
Dude!
driveway.
Arguing?
I wasn't
She's
arguing. We're
just
having a
talking.
conversation.
Yeah.
This is the one night out of the week that we get to hang together. It's date night. You're gonna ruin it.
Dude,
I
don't
just
use
asked you to
those
put seatbelt on.
words.
I'm gonna ruin it. Okay, go, Joe.
Oui.
Okay, all right. I didn't mean to say that. You're not ruining it. I'm
Good.
just confused.
Good. My man is back in the
Do
game.
you still want to go?
I'm gonna go.
Well.
Yeah, we're going the wrong way. My bad. Let's get out of here. You still good?
Okay, he's trying to check in. That's nice.
We're gonna have a good night.
Okay.
All right.
We were just deciding that. Okay,
Hey,
so
please, go on.
let's talk about this, because I see this in so many couples that I counsel, where for some reason or another, it seems like these things become arguments. So today we're going to talk about why these things become arguments. So this is called egocentric caregiving, which means that care is being defined from the giver's internal logic. And that's if we choose to interpret this as care at all. But if I would counsel this couple, this would be called misattunement in a session, which is what this actually is. So in my sessions with couples, I explain that this can't be called care because your partner doesn't feel cared for. And they responded by letting you know too. If they're asking for water but you throw them potato chips, it's not only useless, but it can look like a refusal to respond to the actual need expressed in the situation, right? So the first appeal she makes is an identity appeal. She says, I wouldn't get in the car without a seatbelt on. It's a hard word. It's, when someone tries to remind the other person of who they are based on established patterns, she's saying, you know me, you've seen me before, this is not something I would do. It's almost like an attempt to restore shared reality and common sense, because he is acting as if that shared knowledge doesn't exist anymore. Now, to that, he responds with, but you can get a ticket. This is a common defense mechanism where the person deflects away from the content of the message and retreats into a topic more comfortable, effectively ignoring what was just said, because the goal of the deflection is to allow him to avoid engaging with her lived reality and the misattunement she's trying to point to, while still appearing reasonable, logical, justified, if you want. So she does a great job of repeating herself and go into the I wouldn't do that one more time, to which he now responds with, I'm just trying to help out, or something like that. His plea seems to be made because he's catching that something is off, so he's trying to remind her of his intentions, almost as if implying that if he had good intentions, then the behavior should be adjusted to be received well. But that brings us to one of the most discussed topics in couple counseling: intent versus impact. The rule is simple here. If the impact of my words or actions is different than my intent, it's my responsibility to correct it. Otherwise, an expectation might start to form in the background. Well, if the intention was good, then the discomfort must be her problem, right? And if she has a problem, well, she has to change. And this is exactly where women are traditionally expected to smooth things over, to say, okay, I know you meant well, to swallow the irritation, to regulate themselves and to move on. But that expectation is unrealistic, because if she does that, then the misattunement never gets addressed. He never has to update his behavior or downright change it, and he gets to keep his self-image's caring partner while she carries the consequences of the misattunement, you see. He then says it doesn't have to be an argument or something like that, but I fail to understand, where did he see one? Up until this point, she has clarified her identity, she repeated herself calmly, she tried to restore share reality. None of this is arguing. Quite the opposite. This seems repair-seeking behavior. The reason he calls it an argument is simply because she doesn't drop it, I think. You see, the expectation we talked about before is being formed. And so instead of actually listening to what she's trying to say, he labels the act of her continuing speaking as the problem. Now, this move serves several psychological functions at once. First, it shuts down accountability. If this is an argument, then the issue is the conflict itself, not the behavior that caused it. He no longer has to look at whether he missed her, deflected or invalidated her identity appeal, right? The problem becomes that she didn't let it go. Second, it reasserts control over the frame, right? By naming it an argument, he positions himself as the calm, reasonable one, and her as the one that escalated things. This is a subtle power move, even if unconscious, right? It restores hierarchy. I'm trying to keep things peaceful. You're the one disrupting them, right? Third, it evokes a gendered expectation. Women are socially conditioned to avoid being seen as starting fights. So this label carries pressure whether we like it or not. And part of making women feel safe is also understanding the sudden ways in which they're expected to abandon themselves and not enforcing the same. Like, even though all of this is happening, we still see her calmly standing her ground. She reminds him that she doesn't like being told things she's already doing. A reasonable ask. And I'm very happy she's pushing on this, because this is one of those things that need to be talked about. But unfortunately, the answer comes again by not actually responding to her boundary setting. Like his answer, I mean. It's simple, really, right? Someone says, I don't like X thing. The appropriate response is curiosity or adjustment. What we don't say is, I just asked you to put the seatbelt on. Because we crossed already the line for deflection before, but now we go straight to invalidation, right? He reduces her boundary to a factual restatement of his action, as if repeating it somehow nullifies her experience. What he's doing wrong here is refusing to acknowledge that subjective experience as valid data. He's implicitly kind of saying, since my behavior was simple, your reaction is unnecessary. And that is the exact mechanism by which people learn that their boundaries will not be respected unless they escalate. He's actively resisting responsibility of his words. So she tries to talk his language, hard observable facts. She says something like, I was already doing it. And at this point, the interaction could end cleanly, right? Acknowledging that statement would require only one thing from him, to recognize his intervention was unnecessary. But this character chooses violence and says, but that's a good thing, right? This is a reframing move. He's trying to keep the narrative that he was right to intervene alive. In a session, we might want to address the fact that it might look like he's prioritizing being right over being responsive, and we might want to clarify why that is. Then we see an example of false symmetry. She names a pattern, a conversation they keep on having. He tries to turn her pattern statement into a hypothetical role reversal, as if the issue were simply who reminds whom. But she's not arguing for permission to remind. She's talking about how it feels to be managed, how it feels to be corrected, how it feels to not feel trusted, right? She does that repeatedly, and he's trying to tell her, well, I would be fine with it. Now, to be honest, the worst of the worst is when he accuses her of ruining the night, right? Because realistically, he initiated the interaction. He failed to respond to her identity appeal. He deflected into rules. He defended intention over impact. He labeled her continued speaking as an argument. And now, instead of taking responsibility for any of that, he reframes the entire situation as her fault. It's almost like he's saying, if you keep insisting on being understood, you are the one damaging the relationship. So I am very proud of her for pushing back, for the character pushing back, right? I honestly could talk forever about this video, but I think I gotta stop. If you have questions, you know what to do. Or if you have a different opinion, I would love to hear you guys' opinions. This is not meant to be hateful towards the creator. This is just, you know, for educational purposes only. So see it that way. All right, let's go to the next video then. I'm having a lot of fun with this. Okay, this one's on TikTok. So before I play, let me just make sure that, hello? Let me just make sure that
there are actually some cultures in which
What?
Did you know there are actually some cultures in which rape is virtually unknown? There's an anthropologist called Peggy Reeves Sunday, and she studied over 156 tribes. And what she actually found was that rape was absent or rare in 59% of cases. When she dug into the research, she found that rape-prone societies are more likely to have male dominance hierarchies. They're more likely to glorify violence, and they're more likely to have father-absent child rearing. Dads are gone. And rigid gender roles. In a lot of these cases, rape is used as a punishment for women. It can be ritualistic, it can be ceremonial. Rape-free societies had more gender equality, more cooperative decision-making. Fathers were a lot more involved in child rearing and childcare, and there were more flexible gender roles. Sexual violence isn't human nature. It's hierarchy.
Indeed.
In their book, The Spirit Level, Richard Wilkinson and Kate Pickett showed how income inequality, the difference between the richest and the poorest, is one of the strongest predictors for violence, for different types of violence and aggression. So the larger the gap between the rich and the poor, the more likely these dark traits like narcissism, psychopathy, Machiavellianism, or manipulativeness are likely to arise, because it's essentially a zero-sum game where people are doing whatever they can to raise their own status in society. And then you've got this self-perpetuating violent system. And unfortunately, the 2026 Inequality report shows that inequality, wealth concentration is at an all-time high. We know this because Elon Musk has just been predicted to be the world's first trillionaire.
Oh, well, I
So
didn't know
hierarchy
that, but...
produces inequality, which produces violence, which produces dominance.
Aye.
So if we want to reduce fascism, if we want to reduce violence, we need to dismantle hierarchy, and we need to build societies that value equality and fairness over dominance.
Okay, we don't want necessarily to go either or. And wow, very interesting research. I didn't yet read it myself, but the idea that inequality, hierarchy, and dominance are the root of violence and oppression lines up very well with what I believe too. And it makes me think of something I've been obsessing over lately, over the, past months. Actually, let me do this like as if we were in a session. Okay, let me just bring my tablet out. So the root problem of patriarchy is that it adopts a hierarchical system, which is a vertical line meant to be used as a ranking system, right? We have the important and desirable things on top and the unimportant and undesirable things at the bottom. So by default, this side is better than this one. And it might look okay if we separate these as good and evil, right? But what happens when we split it as male, female, strength, vulnerability, or provider, or caregiver, right? Why should one be more important than the other? Well, the answer in a patriarchy is and will always be power. Many people will tell you that, it's not that being a provider is more important than being a caregiver, but it's just, it tells you who's more important, and who's more important gets to prioritize their needs, which gives me the opportunity to talk about my real beef with patriarchy. The fact that it prioritizes men's needs before children's. And we see it in so many examples that some of us might find even normal, right? One of the most common scenarios I hear across clients is when the father comes home from work and says he needs to relax. And so now the children and entire household must be quiet. They must have no demands. If they could act like they're invisible, that would be great. So in this case, the father's need for decompression takes priority over the children's needs for connection, for play, and the numerous other, needs children have depending on age. Why? Well, because the father has more power. Therefore, according to the patriarchal rules, he can prioritize his needs. Or another scenario, the very fact that for a long time men were and still are socially allowed to not know how to care for their own children or even remember things about their children. Like, I remember seeing a video where dads would be interviewed on the street and asked things about their children, like, their eye color, birthday, the name of their best friends, or the name of their teachers, parent stuff. And they knew nothing. Now, if a mother would be asked these things and not know them, to be honest, it would be seen much worse. But instead, the video was actually framing this in a funny light. Maybe one day we'll actually react to that one too. So in this case, the needs of the children get rerouted to mothers because the father, being at the top of the hierarchy, can outsource things that they deem unimportant to someone below them. And there are many other examples like these, but I think that's the worst thing about patriarchy by a long shot, right? I think that a healthy society would actually turn this vertical line in a horizontal one. So there's no more rankings, no tops and bottoms. There's a spectrum. And whereas before we'd see the middle of the line as the threshold between desirable and undesirable, now we see that middle becomes the point of integration between these two polarities, right? Who you are when you identify with neither and both at the same time. Like between male and female, the integration of the two is human being. Between strength and vulnerability, the integration of the two is discernment, knowing when to use what. Between provider and caregiver, the integration is parent. That's what you gotta be to do both. A healthy society understands you're both. Right? Sometimes you may go in one extreme or the other more. But the point is to have a balance, because once we have a balance, we can add the vertical line from before, this time not to represent rankings, but to represent time. So once we connect the dots and step back, what this structure tells us is that in time, as part of integration, you'll go through all of these phases, even more than once, in order to find a way to always come back in the middle, grounded, focused, right? A healthy society would look at itself and have the respect to not treat its people like competitors on an invented game that unfortunately has real consequences, but it's people eternally going through different seasons of their lives, right? But no matter the season, what's in the middle is what's truly home. And what's in the middle is what we need to come back to. When we talk about the self, the middle point is and will always be the self, because it's the only thing that never changes, no matter the seasons. You go through them as an individual. You always take yourself with you, right? But when we zoom out and apply this model to society, the middle point has to become children or children's needs, basically. And listen, when I say that, I'm not suggesting that suddenly child-free people can't enjoy their lives or that every space must be exclusively dedicated to families at all times or that everyone should make babies. Not at all, okay? I'm also not saying that someone else's children should become your personal responsibility either, okay? What I mean is that when we make the big decisions as a society, you know, like the laws we pass, the resources we allocate, the way we shape the future, children should be something we collectively think about and consider. Like, can you imagine normalizing having as the main priority children's needs in the same way we normalize making money or gaining power? Would wars still happen? I wonder, like, what would have happened if someone would have said to Hitler, dude, no, of course we're not doing this to children. What the hell is wrong with you? Right? Like, and of course, it's not just the big picture either. When you zoom in on actual families, we see the same logic play out in ways that we've all been socialized to see as normal, right? As we saw before in the scenarios. Imagine if instead of joking about a father not knowing his child's favorite cartoon, we treated that like a real data point, like we treat leaving the house without locking the door. Or if we would treat not showing up like not showing up to work, we wouldn't shrug that off as nothing, right? Like we would make things important, and children should be put in the middle, because that's also the only thing that doesn't change about a society, right? A society might go through different systems, different seasons, but children are a constant in all of them. We find children everywhere. Nothing changes in the fact that children are the people that will change the world for the worse or better once they grow up, based on how they grow up, right? So regardless of which seasons or which season we are in, the priority still needs to be the kind of world we're creating and how it influences children. Man, I didn't expect to talk this much, but it was very fun to get my thoughts out there. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you're seeing this on Patreon, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this time together. And if you have videos you want to send me, either leave it in the comments or DM me. So if you're watching this anywhere else, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to join us on Patreon, I would be happy to see you there. But if not, that's also fine. See you next time. And remember to stay golden, guys.